Chandeliers rained glass onto the ballroom floor of the Delacroix Hotel, and Dante Castellano stood in the middle of it like the storm had asked his permission first. 4 men in black tactical vests lay dead around him. He hadn't loosened his tie. Isabella Moreau, Bella, to the 3 people alive who actually knew her, pressed her back against the service pantry wall, her pulse hammering so hard she was certain it echoed off the marble. 10 minutes ago, she'd been refilling champagne flutes for New Orleans' oldest money at the Ruby Masquerade, the city's biggest children's hospital fundraiser. Now the string trio's cello lay shattered on its side, and the air tasted like gunpowder instead of gardenias. She wasn't supposed to be this close to the violence. She was supposed to be invisible, a hired appraiser cataloging donated art for the silent auction, nothing more. That was the cover. It had held for 6 weeks. It had just come apart in 90 seconds. Through the gap in the pantry door, she'd watched the whole thing happen backward. Watched Salvatore Castellano, Dante's older cousin, the man everyone called Sal the Steady, the man who'd practically raised Dante after their father's generation tore each other apart, slide a spare pistol across the floor to a masked shooter before the first round was ever fired. An inside job, a coup wearing a tuxedo. Dante turned, slow, deliberate, like he already knew exactly where to look. His eyes, a green so dark they read as black in low light, found the pantry door. He'd known she was there the whole time. A hand closed around Bella's arm before she could retreat through the kitchen corridor. Sal's enforcer, a mountain of a man named Boudreaux, hauled her out into the wreckage of the ballroom. Found her hiding with the silverware boss, Boudreaux said, shoving her forward. Bella caught herself on a toppled ice sculpture, refusing to fall, refusing to look anything but furious. Up close, Dante Castellano was worse than the rumors. 6'3" of coiled violence wrapped in a charcoal tuxedo, a scar through one eyebrow, a stillness that felt like standing too near a fault line. "You saw all of it," he said. "Not a question." "I saw a caterer trying not to die," Bella shot back. Sirens bled red and blue through the hotel's tall windows. Nop, seconds out. Sal stepped forward, wiping a fleck of blood off his cheek with theatrical calm. "Dante, cops are coming. Let Boudreaux take care of the girl. She's a loose end." And there it was. The tell. Sal wanted her dead before anyone could ask her a single question. Bella watched something shift behind Dante's eyes. Not suspicion of her, but of his own cousin, sharp and sudden as a blade catching light. If Sal wanted her silenced that fast, Dante needed her talking. The ballroom doors burst open. A dozen officers flooded in behind a captain barking orders. His gaze swept the carnage and landed on Dante. "Castellano, you're coming downtown." "On what charge, Captain Reyes?" "I was a guest at a hospital fundraiser when these men opened fire." Dante's hands rose, empty, easy. "I believe that makes me a victim." The captain's eyes cut to Bella, standing rigid between 2 of the most dangerous men in Louisiana. "And her? A hostage?" Sal leaned toward Dante, voice low. "Give her to the cops, or let Boudreaux handle it out back. Either way, she doesn't leave talking." Dante didn't answer his cousin. He crossed the ruined ballroom instead, closing the distance to Bella in 4 unhurried strides. His hand came up, not rough, not grabbing, but settling warm at the back of her neck, his thumb resting over the pulse hammering in her throat. "She's not a hostage, Captain." His voice carried, effortless, across the wrecked room, meant for every set of ears still in it. The police, the surviving guests, and especially his cousin. He looked down at Bella, and whatever silent order lived in that gaze, she understood it perfectly. "Play along, or die where you stand." "Then who is she?" the captain demanded. "She's mine." Dante bent his head until his mouth hovered a breath from her ear, and when he spoke again, it was loud enough to detonate across the entire ballroom. "You're wearing my ring by morning." Before the sentence had finished landing, his mouth crushed down over hers. It wasn't a kiss so much as a verdict. His hand slid into her hair, anchoring her, and for 5 long seconds the world narrowed to cedar cologne, gunpowder, and the terrifying fact that some traitorous part of her chest didn't want him to stop. When he finally pulled back, her lips were swollen and her mind was static. Dante turned to the captain without missing a beat, tucking her against his side like she'd always belonged there. "My fiancé and I have had a difficult night, Captain. My attorneys will call in the morning." The armored SUV cut through rain-slicked streets toward the garden district in total silence. Bella sat as far from Dante as the leather seat allowed, arms crossed, replaying the last 20 minutes like it might start making sense on a second pass. It didn't. "You're thinking loud enough to give me a migraine," Dante said finally, not looking up from a phone that glowed with encrypted files. "I'm thinking about how I explained to my employer that I got dragged out of a gala by a suspected crime boss." "Your employer at the auction house, or the one who signs your actual paycheck." He turned his head. "I've had someone watching you for 2 weeks, Isabella Moreau." The air left her lungs. She kept her face still through sheer force of will. "I don't know what you think you know. I know your grandmother's maiden name was Odette Moreau. I know the Moreau family used to control the Mississippi shipyards before my father bought them out from under her husband in a deal that left him dead in a warehouse fire 2 months later." Dante's voice didn't rise, which somehow made it worse. "I know you didn't take a job cataloging my family's donated art by accident. You're not here for a paycheck. You're here for a ledger." Bella's carefully built silence cracked. "My grandfather didn't die in an accident. Your father murdered him and stole 30 years of Moreau land, and everyone in this city agreed not to remember it. I came here to find proof. That's all. I never touched your business, your money, or your cousin's little coup." "No," Dante agreed quietly, "but Sal thinks you did. That's the problem. He spent 3 years bleeding the family's shipping accounts dry to fund tonight, and he needed a scapegoat the commission would believe over him. A stranger asking questions about old Moreau land deeds was the perfect story. A Fed, a spy, anyone but the man who's been robbing us from the inside." He looked out at the passing streetlights. "He was never going to let you leave that ballroom breathing. Now that I've claimed you in front of half the city, he can't touch you without starting a war he isn't ready to win. So I'm a shield. You're a problem I can't afford to lose," Dante said. "Which means, for now, you stay close. You sleep under my roof, and in exchange, I help you find what my father buried, if you help me bury my cousin first." The Castellano estate on St. Charles Avenue was less a house than a fortress, dressed as old money. Wrought iron, live oaks, a wine cellar that had reportedly outlasted 3 federal investigations. Dante led her past armed men, who didn't blink, and up a curved staircase to a guest suite, with a 4-poster bed and a lock that only worked from the inside. 10 minutes, he said. Don't try the east wing. The vault only opens for my retina, and Boudreaux shoots first out there. Alone, Bella pressed her palms flat against a dresser and breathed until her hands stopped shaking. She hadn't come to New Orleans to fall into a stranger's protection. She'd come because Odette Moreau, 81 years old and raising a granddaughter alone since Bella was 7, had spent 3 decades scraping together rent money on a shipyard clerk's pension, while the family that stole her husband's legacy built mansions 2 miles away. Odette never remarried, never once complained, and every single Sunday for 30 years lit a candle for a man the police report called an accident. Bella hadn't come for romance. She'd come for justice. But 3 days into hiding in Dante Castellano's house, watching him run a criminal empire with the same ruthless precision he used to protect her from his own blood, justice and something far more complicated had started tangling together in her chest. The break came on the 4th night. Sal called an emergency sit-down of the commission, the 5 families who still, technically, ran the docks under a 50-year-old truce. At the old Delacroix ballroom, the same one still being repaired from the shooting. He was going to accuse Dante of harboring a spy and demand a vote to remove him. "We go," Bella said, standing at the head of Dante's kitchen table like she'd earned the right. "Tonight." "Why should we listen to you?" Boudreaux growled. "Because I found what your boss's father hid." Bella set an old leather ledger on the table, pulled at last from behind a false panel in the estate's chapel, exactly where her grandfather's handwritten letters had said it would be. Land deeds, dock ownership, proof Roman Castellano forged Etienne Moreau's signature 2 weeks after he was already dead. And this. She pulled a second, newer folder free. Sal's accounts, Cayman Islands, $40 million skimmed from commission shipping revenue over 3 years. The same 3 years he's been telling everyone Dante's judgment couldn't be trusted. Dante's jaw tightened, but his eyes, when they met hers, held something that wasn't calculation anymore. It looked almost like relief. "Then we let the truth walk into that ballroom with us," he said. "All of it." The commission sat around the same obsidian table where the shooting had started. 5 aging men in a room that still smelled faintly of smoke damage and lily arrangements no one had bothered to remove. Sal stood at the far end, smug, certain, already rehearsing his victory. "You brought her here?" Sal snarled when Dante walked in with Bella on his arm, dressed in deep crimson, looking every inch a woman who belonged in the room and not beneath it. "She's the spy who's been digging through your father's files. She's the woman who found your ledger," Dante cut in, and nodded once. Bella didn't sit. She crossed to the room's central terminal, plugged in the drive, and let the screens do what words couldn't. Rows of offshore transfers bloomed across the walls, Sal's name attached to every one. $40 million, Bella said, her voice steady in a room built to intimidate. "Skimmed from your shipping revenue for 3 years by the man who just accused his own cousin of weakness. He needed a distraction big enough to hide the audit. I was convenient." The oldest man at the table, Don Ricci, turned his cold, unreadable stare on Sal. "Is this true?" "It's fabricated. The routing numbers are live," Bella said. "Call your own banks." Ricci did. The silence while he waited on the line was the loudest thing Bella had ever sat through. When he hung up, his verdict needed no words, only the flick of his eyes toward Sal and the 2 armed men who moved to flank the door. Sal lunged for it anyway, gun rising, aimed at Bella. The shot that dropped him came from Dante. No hesitation, no grief, not yet. That would come later, in private, for the cousin who'd once taught him to sail and had, somewhere in 30 years, decided greed mattered more than blood. Right now, there was only the cold arithmetic of a debt paid. "The stolen money returns to the commission by morning," Dante said, holstering his weapon, his voice carrying the finality of a man closing a book he'd been forced to read twice. Then he turned to the table and did something no Castellano had done in 3 generations. "And the Moreau family's shipping rights, stolen 31 years ago by my father, are restored in full, effective tonight. Effective permanently." Ricci studied him a long moment, then nodded. The closest thing to blessing this room had to offer. Odette Moreau was sitting on her porch when Bella finally drove out to Chalmette 2 days later, papers in hand, restitution documents signed by 5 commission heads who no longer had any reason to lie. Bella knelt on the porch steps and set the deed in her grandmother's lap. "It's done, Grandma Odette. It's over. They gave it back, all of it." Odette's hands, thin and spotted with 81 years of Louisiana summers, trembled over the paper. She didn't cry, not exactly, just closed her eyes and exhaled like she'd been holding that breath since 1995. "Your grandfather would have liked that boy," she said eventually, nodding toward the SUV, idling at the curb, where Dante waited without intruding, giving them the moment. The one whose father took everything. Funny, how the debt finally comes home in the one who chose to pay it. That night, back in the quiet of the Garden District house, Dante found Bella at the window, watching the lights of the city she'd come to expose him in, and instead ended up staying for. "You could leave now," he said, low, behind her. "You got what you came for. No one's hunting you. You're free." Bella turned, tracing the thin scar above his eyebrow the way she'd wanted to since the first night. "I don't want to leave," she said. "I came here for justice. I didn't expect to find the truth wearing your face too." Dante's answer wasn't words. It was his mouth on hers again. Slower this time. No audience, no danger, no order disguised as a claim. Just a promise, finally spoken honestly. The fake fiancé act was over. Everything that came after was real. If this story hit you right in the chest, the betrayal, the justice, the slow burn redemption, you know what to do. Like it, share it with someone who lives for this kind of drama, and subscribe so you never miss the next one. Drop a comment. Was it the ledger or the kiss that got you?